Right, so now we're onto the stage where we can solder the capacitors onto the PCB board. There are 4 different types of capacitors. You have the orange ceramic capacitor, we have got our 100 capacitor, so if you can see on it, it says 100. We've got 2 of those. We've got a 470 capacitor, it says 470 on it if you look carefully. We have 2 of those, and we've got a 10 capacitor, and we've got 1 of those. We're going to start with the orange ceramic capacitor. So they start in reverse order, just because they're slightly easier to solder, and they go in these holes, C7 and C6, C7 and C6. And it doesn't matter which way around you put these, so just pop those in, C7 and C6. I would, as I've done before, because they will fall out, just fold one of your legs across just to hold it in place while you solder it, and then solder that. Okay, so I've now soldered my orange ceramic capacitors in place. You can see under here, again, as I've shown before, nice solders with a nice triangular shape to them, no gap, no bridging between, nice gaps around them, super neat. Okay. What we're looking to do now is we will do capacitor 3, because capacitor 3 is in the middle, and capacitor 3 is your 10 capacitor, okay? That is your 10 capacitor. Now, this is really important. These capacitors now, all of these black capacitors, all are polarized, and that means it's important which way round they go. And to know which way around they go, it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. On the capacitor itself, one of the sides has a negative, so the minus sign, a negative sign on it, and that equates to the shorter leg. So the leg that is the shortest is the negative, but it also says it on the side, negative here. And that needs to correspond with the negative, on the PCB. You can see that. So the negative on the PCB. So take your capacitor, make sure the shorter end, which is the negative, goes into the negative hole. So there it is. The negative side is going into where it says negative on the PCB. Push it right down. So we've got negative to negative. Turn it over. I'll just bend one leg across, as always, just to hold it in place, and solder that in place. The next capacitors we'll do will be C4 and C5, which are your big 470 capacitors. All right, so your big 470 capacitors, exactly the same again. A negative symbol on the capacitor is the short side, and make sure the negative end matches the negative on the PCB. So like that way, the negative end, if I can show you on the video, the negative end matches negative on the PCB. So bang both of those into your PCB board, like that. There we go. So negative is facing the orange ceramic capacitors, and solder those in place. And now it's time for our last two capacitors, C1 and C2. And there they go. There are 100 capacitors, 100, and they just need to go in. So again, the negative side is the short wire. And that short wire needs to face the negative on the PCB. Okay, so if I move my hand, and you can see that negative on the PCB is the negative on the capacitor. Push that down, solder them both in place, and there we go. We've got all of our capacitors in, our ceramic orange ones, and our 3 different type of polarized capacitors, all in there. The negative sides are facing the negative on the PCB, so that's all ready to go. Next video, we're going to move on to connecting our speakers.